Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. This past week, we were rocked with headlines of what took place in Paris, France, with an incredible event of terrorists who, are Islamic extremists, and incredible headlines, and it dominated the headlines throughout the week, and now the people in France experiencing something of their own 911 experience. And I've been watching for quite some time the growing connection between Westerners and these terrorist organizations. How do they recruit individuals who were raised in the West, and some of whom have no real background with the Middle East, but somehow find themselves getting converted to Islam and a radical form of that as well. I'm delighted to have Alex Van Ness on the program, and he is with the Center for Security Policy. And welcome to the program. How are you, Alex?
I'm well. Thank you for having me on, Kevin.
And it's interesting. We scheduled you. We began the scheduling in late December or mid-December, I believe, and we're just so packed with guests constantly. It's sometimes hard to get it in the time frame we like, but it's certainly a tragically timely story.
Oh, absolutely. It's sadly, it couldn't have been a better time for this type of interview. So,
yep. Center for Security Policy, by the way, can be found at centerforsecuritypolicy.org. What do you think about? First of all, people are shocked to see the headlines of so many of these individuals who are now involved in these acts of terror are in fact Americans or Westerners, and often now we've heard stories in the last 60 days of young teenage women, young women who are trying to migrate over there to meet people that they're going to marry who are terrorists. I mean, it's almost like sci-fi, some of the stuff we're seeing.
Oh, absolutely. There are new reports coming out there saying there are upwards to 30,000 ISIS fighters currently, and a large chunk of them are Westerners, including over 1,000 from France. The actual number of Americans fighting for ISIS are classified, but there are reports that say that upwards to about 300 people from America have been lured into going to Syria to fight for ISIS.
Wow, that's just incredible. What would you say? Tell me, first of all, who are these type of people that are being recruited? Tell us a little bit. Can you provide a little bit of a profile?
Yeah. So, I mean, this doesn't work for every single person, but generally, you see a lot of younger teens into people into their mid-20s. Are being recruited. ISIS, unlike its predecessor Al-Qaeda, has a very sophisticated social media presence. And they've been recruiting through use of social media, and they pick up on people who tend to be pretty disillusioned, a little bit mentally unstable, feel like the Western society and the system has kind of failed them. Many of the fighters in their 20s have had run-ins with the law in the past, and ISIS comes to them and tell them, hey, you can belong to something bigger than yourself. You can be part of a noble cause, they describe it as, and they romanticize jihad, and they convince these young teens and early adults to join them and go to Turkey to get into Syria.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of these, I'm assuming a lot of these are classic loners, some of whom might end up finding themselves in like Sandy Hook situations, but instead did something for a greater glory. Is that possible or part of that profile?
Yeah, I would say that's part of that profile. You do have a lot of people. There are a lot of reports from people who are 18, 19, 20 years old where that are caught trying to go and flee to head to fight for ISIS, and there are reports that say all of their friends say he seemed like a very nice guy,
right?
Quiet, nice, but there was something inside of him that just he was not connecting to Western society. And ISIS romanticized jihad. They compare it to, they have very interesting videos highlighting their successes, and they make fighting look romantic, to like a romantic idea to them. And there are reports, the Kabir Ahmed, for instance, a British national, when he got caught, he said life with ISIS was better than the game Call of Duty.
Yes, right. And by the way, it's interesting, one of the biggest creators of video games today is the United States Army. And so it sounds like they're taking a chapter out of the U.S. Army's playbook.
Mm-hmm.
They're making video games for the same purpose. And I'm not making a moral comparison, just a recruiting one.
Absolutely. And additionally, they have a very strong presence on social media outlets such as Twitter and Facebook, and they utilize that very extensively in their recruitment.
Yeah, it's a very guerrilla, no pun, or maybe it is a pun intended, guerrilla form of marketing. What is the, and I'm assuming from a profile perspective, not particularly well-educated, most of these people that are being recruited. What are some other characteristics that it brings to that? And what are some identifying factors for loved ones of these people to look out for?
Well, a lot of them tend to be... you're right. They tend to be unsophisticated. They tend to be younger. You'll start to see, if you start to see just anger at the system. I mean, many of these people are recent converts to Islam. Not to say that converting to Islam is necessarily bad, but many of these people self-convert and they pick up on very fundamentalist literature and they indoctrinate themselves over the internet, and then they go to mosques such as the Islamic Society of Boston, which has very mid-tide, or other areas in Minnesota, which has been known for recruiting of al-Nusra members, and they'll get mixed and involved with wrong people, and they get very indoctrinated very quickly, and they almost immediately want to just go off and fight.
Right. And they probably want them to do that because they don't want to have enough time. When I say they, the terrorist groups, they don't want them to spend enough time to dig their way out of it.
Yeah. Oh, of course not. When they romanticize fighting for ISIS and the Islamic State is wonderful, they don't tell you that once you get to Syria, you're not going to have barely any electricity. You're barely going to have any running water. If you do the wrong thing, they will kill you themselves because they'll say you're not holding to true Islam. So it's a mixed bag. They don't want to tell you the negative aspects of these of fighting for ISIS. They just want to share the idea that they want to romanticize it and tell you that it's wonderful. Come join us.
Yeah. Well, I tell you right now, people need to be aware of this. Mom and dads, loved ones, friends. It's an interesting phenomenon and one we need to be watching very closely. The best website for people to learn more about the Center for Security Policy is just that, centerforsecuritypolicy.org. Send my regards to Frank Gaffney, who I worked with for a brief time in the mid-1980s when he was in transition after leaving the White House, immediately after leaving the White House. And he is one of the nicest gentlemen I've ever worked with. A great American. So my regards to Frank.
Also, so.
Yeah, he's an awesome individual. Center for Security Policy and our guest today, a really well-versed one. I appreciate you spending time with us, Alex Van Ness, to tell us about this story.
Delighted. Thank you for having me.
We're going to have this, of course, featured at usdailyreview.com when we have the audio available. Make sure you check it out over there. And, of course, it'll be at priceofbusiness.com as well. When we come back, much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here can be found over there at usdailyreview.com. Stay tuned for more right after this.